Well, Chairman, it's another beautiful day in the paradise known as Tone Town. And I welcome you both back. Last week I had to fly solo, and it was a lonely place without the both of you. But I'm glad that you both find yourselves back here. And I hope you had a wonderful anniversary, Brian, and vacation in God's country, Florida.
Yeah.
But today I have something very interesting to speak with you both on. I'm interested to hear your opinions, your state of mind, as it relates to the best guitar amps of 2023, according to Guitar Player Magazine. Now, as we know, if you've been listening to any of our episodes up until this point, we have not always seen eye to eye with our friends over at Guitar Player Magazine in terms of their recommendations, whether it comes to cables or many other subjects. We seem to be differing in many ways, but maybe today will be the day that we find some common ground. And as opposed to how we might normally do this conversation where we just go through their list one by one, I think we actually should just start by going through their list completely. And that way, we can maybe dissect some of the choices, and then maybe we can go about creating our own list of what we think people should be looking for. Now, I don't think that all of the choices that they provided here were amps that necessarily released in 2023. I think they're just saying, what are the top 10 amps if you're buying an amp in 2023? And which I think potentially makes this list even more problematic from my perspective. But I'm going to share my screen here, and let's just quickly, just to start us off, let's just go through the list of 10, if you all don't mind.
Let's go.
All right, screen share. I'm going to blow it up nice and big.
Ooh.
I'm going to zoom right in.
Spark. Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. So, number one, we're not saving it till the end, is the Positive Grid Spark. They said is this the smartest amp on the planet? They don't say it. They ask as a question because they genuinely aren't sure. Number two is the Friedman BE Mini Head. All right. So far, we're all in solid state land or digital land. Number three is the Blackstar HT1R Mark II. This one allegedly has a tube.
A couple.
Allegedly. 4 is the Boss Katana 100 Mark II. 5 is the Marshall Origin 20C. 6 is the Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister Deluxe 20 Head. 7 is the Orange Rocker 15. 8 is the Fender Tonemaster Twin Reverb. 9 is the Supro 64 Reverb. And 10 is the Fender 68 Custom Deluxe Reverb. Oh, and there's an 11. Vox AC30 C2.
Oh boy.
And there's a 12. So it goes beyond 12. Victory V40, the Duchess Head.
Okay.
13, Blackstar St. James EL34 Combo. 14, the Tone King Imperial Mark II. And that's everything. So they have 14 amplifiers that they list as the best amplifiers that you can buy in 2023. So just getting your thoughts and opinions on this. Who of the two of you would like to start?
I can have a crack here. I think my first thoughts here is the list in and of itself, I think, is a little bit too broad. I think they are going for such a huge range in this not top 10, top 14 list.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is they are going for amps that range from computers being number one, the Positive Grid Spark. It's essentially a laptop without a screen. You can control it with your phone. There's apps. You can switch between all sorts of things. There's voice command on it. Like you can, I think you can tell it to, I don't know, go make you a latte or something. All the way down to something that we are used to, maybe when we were kids, of what an amp was, which was, all tube 1x12 combos. And so I think the range of amps in here is a little bit too broad, in my opinion, for, what you should be buying in 2023. I think it should be, what you should be buying if you're needing to practice at home versus what you should be buying gigging, because it just ranges so broadly, and the list can be so vast. So I think that's my one issue here, looking at the list from the outset. I do really like some of the amps on this list. I have to say, I would not disagree with a top 10 list and some of these amps making the spot, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more later. But I'll stop there. I'll hand it off to you, Brian. You can take the virtual baton and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the list, it's interesting. Are they ranking them 1 through 14, or are they just suggesting these?
I think that they are rank ordered, is my understanding.
See, that right there for me, like as you're going through the list, surprised me, because some of them that are towards the bottom would be better towards the first couple slots. It's definitely interesting to see, like, the Spark being the number one, if they're saying that's their number one pick. There are some amps on there that are, I am a huge fan of, the Tone King, the Vox, the Fender stuff, like those and them all being towards the bottom was really surprising. As well as, the as Grant said, the wide variety and range of different types of amps and stuff. I was also looking at a lot of the places, like where the best deal, like if you look under the product, is like best deal where you can buy this, and like a lot of the first 6 of them, I think, were like you could buy it at Walmart. I don't think I've ever bought an amp at Walmart before, so I thought that was.
Can.
I guess so. I mean, I have a Walmart right by my house, so yay. But I would say the same as Grant. It's a very interesting and wide variety of stuff that they're recommending, and I think the list is a little chaotic in where things are placed. But
it's kind of like what we've chatted about in the past, though. Of you can't make a list like this across an industry. You have to make a list with a bit more context of, like, if someone was to ask me, hey, I need the best overdrive pedal, I can't recommend them the best overdrive pedal without knowing what genre of music they play, if they already have a high gain or low gain pedal, or if they're after a boost or maybe some gain out of a compressor or whatever, fuzz. Like, so here you have something that's like solely based on amp and cab sim. And then at the bottom, you have something that is a 1x12 combo with no modern features, but is a beautiful amp. And so I don't think you can make these are the list of amps you should buy in 2023 or consider without knowing more context. And I think that's what my big issue is at a bigger picture level, starting off the conversation.
Well, I have to say, guitar player, they burned me again, man. I was hoping that with all of the knowledge and resource over there, that we would be able to come up with a better list. And one guy that I think makes a really good list, if somebody would be so compelled to check him out, Lyle over at Psionic Audio, who has his own YouTube channel, he creates his list of best amps, and he does it by price point. So he says top 10 amps under $500, top 10 amps under $1,000, top 10 amps under, the price points go up and up and up. And I don't know where he maxes out, maybe around 2,000.
I think his max is if you're a doctor.
If you're a doctor.
Top 10 amps,
yeah.
If you're a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gold plated. Unicorn hair.
And he is a amplifier technician. And so he's evaluating them on a level that guitar player really can't, which is on their reliability and what their likelihood of staying alive and reliable for 10 or 15 years based on what he's seen, or longer. And so he gives really smart recommendations so that you as a consumer can know that you're not having to pour a lot of money into these amplifiers in order to keep them working. A lot of the amplifiers that we were shown by Guitar Player, those amps are unserviceable. So if anything ever happens to them, nobody can fix them. You can't take them to an amp tech and they can't fix a positive grid spark because it's a computer, as Grant said. So unless it's something short of a hardware piece like a jack or a switch, there's nothing that they can do to fix what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Equally, a lot of the solid state ones are difficult to repair because most technicians that work on tube-based stuff don't always work on solid state-based stuff, because that's sort of what separates the kind of basic level technicians from the more advanced technicians is their ability to work on solid state, because it tends to be much more difficult than tube. And a lot of them just won't do it, or it's surface mount, and that can create a whole other issue for a lot of these technicians that are used to working with through hole amps, stuff like gold fenders. But I think the other consideration before maybe we get into making our own list of what we think best amps are is you don't necessarily have to have a new amp to have a great amp. And I try to spend a lot of time on our channel talking about really wonderful, affordable amps that maybe didn't get their credit or their due, but that are incredibly well built, reliable, and will give you all of the tones that you could want or imagine. And they are under $1,000 and they're hand wired and all the buzzwords that we would want to hear in an amplifier, but they're just not new. So we'll get into that. But before we get into that, I want to pass it over to Grant, who's going to tell you about a couple of amazing sponsors that make our podcast possible every single week. Grant, I leave it to you.
Thank you, Mason. First one, I wanted to tell you guys about one of our longstanding sponsors of the show is the Guitar Sanctuary,
TGS.
where Brian Omilion.
That's his
is
rap
currently
name.
seated.
Omilion.
Brian Omilion.
Billy
And these are some of the good times you will have at the Guitar Sanctuary. They sell all sorts of gear, anything that we really chat about on the show, whether it's, Vertex, Goodwood Audio, and any other brand really in the industry, Guitar Sanctuary carries. And obviously it comes along with some great service, beautiful faces like the one you're seeing on screen right now with Omili Vanilli himself. And
he'll rap to close the deal.
And exactly. If it will close the deal, he will do I was going to say a beautiful rap. I don't know if that's taken it a bit too far, but a rap nonetheless. And then if you need it all set up on a pedal board, Brian Omilion himself can set that all up for you on a rig, get you going for your next gig, and trying to think of another word that rhymes here. And you're going to have a great time over at the Guitar Sanctuary. So check them out, theguitarsanctuary.com, or go in store and say hi in person. It's a good thing. The other amazing sponsor I want to tell you guys about is monocreators.com. So from backpacks, which Brian has all of them, double guitar bags, single guitar bags, pedal boards. These guys are the masters at soft bags that protect your gear, as well as some great accessories and pedal boards, as I've mentioned, as well on top of that. So my favorite thing about the pedal boards, tons of room under their angled style pedal board for junctions, patch bays, power supplies, pedals you don't need to touch while you play. Maybe they're MIDI controlled. They've got so much room under there. It's like you have a second pedal board to mount stuff. So love that. Lightweight, come with great soft bags. And then from the double guitar gig bags, where you can bring maybe a Strat and a Les Paul, two very different guitars to a gig safely. And then Brian obviously brings all, his camera gear, coffee supplies, diapers for the kids. All sorts of things can go in these backpacks, and they'll show up in one piece. So check out monocreators.com, and you can use the code Chairmen to get 10% off your order. CHAIRMEN. So those are two of our incredible sponsors today. I'll throw it back to you, Mason, and we can carry on with the conversation.
All right. So we've talked about the guitar player list. We've critiqued it some, I think fairly. And I think we need to get to creating our own list. So would one of you grace us with maybe a list of amplifiers that we think might be great? And this doesn't need to be restricted to tube amplifiers. These could be solid state amplifiers. These could be amplifier models, which they didn't include any amplifier modeling pedals in here, which surprised me. Stuff like, the UA stuff or Walrus or Strymon, which are fairly ubiquitous at this point. So would one of you like to start us off in terms of, maybe we don't need to rank order these, but maybe this is something for a listener that they could listen to this and they could say, that would be something that I should check out if I'm considering a tube amp, or if I'm considering a solid state amp, or if I'm considering a modeler amp, that's going to point them in the right direction, that's going to be vetted by three individuals that are in the industry in putting pedals in combination with various types of amplifiers every day. Who would like to start?
Brian, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I don't mind starting off. Obviously, we have talked through modelers, because you just mentioned modelers and everything. Like, there's the recommendation of it's understanding the concept of what some of these modelers will do and stuff, and it's interesting to see how some people will be using. But like the Wallace Audio ACS1 is a great all-in-one amp cab modeler. Is that considered a modeler? The pedal ones?
Yeah, I think it's considered
it's modeling an amp. Yeah. So like the ACS1, the Dream or Ruby from UA, or the Strymon Iridium, like those are the ones I've used. I have played through the Tonex before. We had a whole conversation on the Tonex, and a lot of people love them. It's just just my personal opinion of what I think about the Tonex. But then there's the Quad Cortex, like that's another modeler type pedal, but that does a whole lot of stuff. But it's interesting seeing. I just watched a video over of the guys from Elevation Church Worship. Like those guys are using like the Quad Cortexes and live amps. So it's an interesting thing where you'll see some people will use like a super hybrid rig of live tube amps with like multi-effect units like the Quad that can also do amps and cabs and stuff. So there's a whole list of stuff. But I would say, if starting off, I would say you can't go wrong with the a real simple Fender Deluxe amp. Like that's my go-to, is a Fender Deluxe. Seeing the AC30 C2 on there, I used to have one of those. So like those are like some of my staple sounds that I really like and growing up with.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
I may say some controversial things here. I think Mason may disagree with me. Brian, you may as well.
Bring it on.
But even going back to the guitar player lists, I think on certain people's lists, I'll say this not having played the Positive Grid, but looking at its specs and what it's able to do. I think for some people, the Positive Grid should be their top 3. I think if you are starting out on guitar and you don't want to invest thousands of dollars to get going on pedals and on all sorts of different gear just to, see if you like it, I think something like the Positive Grid is actually a brilliant idea. You can plug your guitar straight into it. There's all sorts of effects. You can play along, so you can get like a band type feel.
How much is the P grid?
It was roughly $250, give or take. It was low 300s Canadian, but I didn't check out the US price. So I'd say it'd be mid to high 200s.
It says here it's $299 in pounds. I don't know why it's in pounds, so but it's in pounds.
Roughly $250 to $300 US, give or take. And so it comes with all these features that, as someone, I remember when I was first starting out, playing to click, playing to drums, having some basic effects to find out what I like, some amp and cab sim. I can play quietly. I can play out of two little 4-inch speakers that I'm sure I'll leave that to something else. They may not sound amazing, but they would, get you close. So I think for some people, that could be a really good option. For me, I would probably go crazy having to play that thing because I now know what I like. I know what I'm after. So for me, it is not going to make my top 10 in any universe. But for someone else, I think it really could. So all that to say, I am not against all digital amps that come with the apps and that come with all this stuff for the right person. If it was my list, I would put something like a Fender Deluxe on there. I would put a Vox AC30 on there. I love the Vox sound. For other people, that maybe know what they like but can't lug around an amp, I think the UA Dream is an awesome choice, which is basically a pedal. It's a pedal size, amp, and you can plug it into an interface or you can plug it out to some monitors or straight into front of house. So I think something like that is awesome. I'm a Vox guy. I love the Vox sound. If I had to pick one amp, that would be it. But the UA Ruby, I tried using it live in a band context. I was struggling to get the sound I had, in my head from that. And I went to the Dream, which is Fender style, and right away it was easy to find a sound out of it. So even as a Vox guy, I really like the Dream. One that may be controversial, not sure if you guys have spent much time with these or not. A buddy of mine just got the Tone Master Deluxe. I've used it in person, so playing in front of the speaker, and then I've heard it played, in a venue through front of house with pedals direct, so it wasn't mic'd up. So I've heard it both moving air and with a DI output, and I have to say it sounded really good in the context of a band and standing in front of it. I wouldn't say I would necessarily take it over a real tube deluxe amp, but man, it was impressive and it was super lightweight, and the price point you can't really complain about. I think Canadian it was just over $1,000, brand new. So I was really impressed with the Tone Master. I could see a spot as a tool in an arsenal. I could see a spot for that in a rig as well. So those would be kind of my choices. Amp and cab sim, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Dream. If I had to pick one amp, it would be an AC30. If I had to pick one hybrid, it would be a Tone Master Deluxe or Twin. Those would be my choices.
Mm.
Oh, I remember we had this conversation about the Tone Masters.
I know, and that's why I was setting Mason up here. I was looking at Mason at the Tone Master. So Mason, please. Why don't you let us know your thoughts?
Well, my challenge on the Tone Master is that it's just not serviceable. If anything goes wrong, it's done. Yep. And so there's like a certain like planned obsolescence with a lot of the amplifiers that are of that style, where there's a limited time that everything's going to be working, and when it stops working, the amp is done. And you see. What you don't see a lot of that are still in the field are solid state in modeling amps from 20 years ago. What you do see a lot of are tube amps from the 60s and 70s that are still around because they are serviceable. You can repair them. And they will pretty much last forever with standard maintenance that most people can do. But what I want to transition us to is what I believe a lot of people are not talking about and should be talking about, which is going for secondhand amps instead of going with new amps. And I know that this was not necessarily in the conversation as it relates to the video, or sorry, the articles that we were reading. So I just went to the local Craigslist app, and this could just as well be Reverb or fill in the blank site. One that I might talk about here shortly would be the Gear Exchange over at Sweetwater. But you can look for some. I just typed in Rivera because I feel like Paul Rivera era Fenders are really good deals. And they tend to do a lot, and they are all the things that you'd want. They're hand-wired, point-to-point. They have channel switching. They have effects loops. They do a lot of things really well. Now, here we see kind of like super champs. They're around $1,500. These are kind of cult classic amps because they're super small and they have a lot of options. But if we were to say, I don't know, type in, Fender amp, and we're to see some of the stuff that's around here. Here you can get a Silverface Bassman for $500. These are amazing pedal platforms. You can get a Fender Showman for $1,200. Again, these are both hand-wired, point-to-point amplifiers. And I'm going to kind of stay mostly in that realm. You can get a black panel Champ, $1,500. Let's see what else is cool here that we see on Craigslist. And again, I'm just considering them $900 for 1970 Pro Reverb. Now it looks like it has a few little nicks and bruises here, but that doesn't matter for a Fender amp. Again, everything on that is serviceable. $1,300 for a twin reverb with JBLs. Let's see. Just looking for stuff that's a good deal.
I completely forgot about Craigslist.
Craigslist is a great resource. $1,200 Fender Vibrolux NOS tubes. This looks like a 70s Vibrolux. It's a great deal. Here's another 79 Vibrolux, $1,600. So there are so many amazing amplifiers. I would say any Fender amp from the 60s or 70s, even if it's Silverface, the Silverface ones still are hand-wired, point-to-point, and you can easily have them converted to the mid-60s black panel spec for less than $100. The parts are negligible, and you're really just paying for somebody's time and labor to convert them. You can change the speakers in them and even get more versatility out of them. These are amazing amplifiers. There's another Vibrolux for $1,500. These are incredible deals. I would say the 70s Fenders are slept on so frequently. They are really wonderful amps, and they don't get their due. I would say that they are much better than just going with, say, a reissue. I think the challenge with the reissues is they don't exactly mirror what the originals represented. So if you buy, let's say, a Princeton Reverb reissue, it's actually not fully like an original Princeton. They've taken some liberties. They've made it more manufacturable in these different ways. One guy that does a good job, again, of going through some of this stuff and seeing what actually goes into the build and the quality is, again, Psionic Audio. He actually says that of all the reissue series that they've done, that the single, I think it's a single 12 Pro Reverb 68 reissue, which never existed in that particular format, was actually the best built. And he gives some recommendations on some small changes that you can make to improve the reliability of it. But that sounds like it would be a really nice if you wanted to go with a new amp. But all these amps here are, if you can find a deluxe reverb that's from the 70s, this will be a great buy and will always be just easy to fix, won't fail. I would highly recommend that if you're in the market for a new amplifier, don't get a reissue, get a deluxe reverb of some kind. they're going to be the best bang for your buck for sure. I want to go more into this, but before I do, I want to break for a moment to talk about a few of our sponsors that make the podcast possible every week. The first of which are our friends over at the Gear Exchange. And maybe we will spend a little time checking that out as well for some cool used amp listings. So Sweetwater, if you're unaware, has a new program called the Sweetwater Gear Exchange, and it is a place where you can buy and sell used gear very much like you would on an eBay or a Reverb. But the cool thing about the Gear Exchange is not only do you have the backing and support of one of the best retailers in the business, that being Sweetwater, you also have the ability to keep all of your earnings as a seller if you decide that you want to put all of your earnings on a Sweetwater gift card. So if you're somebody like me that's buying stuff at Sweetwater all the time anyway, and you don't want to have to pay between 7 and 10% of your profits back to the place that you sold your gear from, this is a great way to ensure that you keep 100% of your profits, putting it on a Sweetwater gear or Sweetwater gift card. And it's amazing service. I really dig it. I've been buying and selling on that regularly, and I highly recommend that you do the same. And we'll even take a look over there and see if we can find some cool deals that you can find for yourself on some great amps. But I highly recommend Sweetwater Gear Exchange. Sweetwater.com/used will take you right there. Secondly, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Bestronix, btpa.com. Of course, as you all know, we cannot go a show without mentioning our good friend Brad, just a salt of the earth Midwesterner from Chicago, Illinois. Just the greatest stuff on earth is available there. Everything you can imagine for your pedalboard needs, whether it be dual lock Velcro, whether it be square plugs, whether it be Mogami cable, or even the house brand Bestronix cable. They have every single imaginable thing that you could think of as it relates to your pedalboard. And they're giving listeners a 10% off code for their entire order using the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS. Just like the old Saturday Night Live bit where they talk about da bears, we're going to get our discount code from da chairs. So go over to Bestronix, which is btpa.com, use that 10% off code, tell them the chairman sent you, and give Brad a big digital hug, virtual hug, because he's a good guy. And if you ever have any questions, of course, Brad's going to do right by you. Lastly, our friends over at Stringjoy, who have amazing strings. As I've talked about, I'm a string destroyer, self-admitted. And I just have this corrosive sweat on my hands that after I play most guitar strings for just an hour, they almost start to rust in front of my eyes. It's an amazing thing. They should study me. But Stringjoy does something that I have never experienced before. I normally have to use coated strings in order to get longevity. I've not found an uncoated string that allows me the ability to be able to use a guitar for several days without needing to restring. And Stringjoy so far has been the only company that I've found that has that. They even offer coated strings, which I've yet to try, but I keep meaning to try them. But I've been so impressed with just the quality. They're handmade in Nashville, Tennessee in small batches. They're not a big company, but they're making very, very beautiful boutique bespoke strings. I highly recommend that you give them a try. And they also offer subscription services for people that want to have a predictable string allotment that's given to them every single month. They also offer that service. So head over to stringjoy.com. Use the coupon code BOARDS, BOARDS. Get 10% off of your order. Tell them the chairman sent you. And I think you're going to be really happy, as I have, with the Stringjoy strings. So first of all, gents, getting back to these amplifier recommendations, what do you think first about the Craigslist approach, going used, getting an amp from the 60s or 70s, and you know, maybe they might need a little TLC at first, but these are amps that could be with you for the rest of your life. In other words, there's nothing in those amps that can't be fixed, and it's something that you could use forever. It'll be reliable. They are going to be well built. What do you think about this methodology as opposed to going with a digital or solid state amplifier?
I think the biggest, well, firstly, I should say I love it. Like, you're making me want to go and pick up some of those amps that you just put on the screen. So there might be some packages coming to your door, Mason, and I'll pick them up later. So like, I think as far as bang for buck, this is the best approach you could take. The main thing that's coming up in my head, though, playing the other side of the argument, is that I know a lot of my customers can make live noise in certain contexts, practice, at home, whatever it is. They can crank up their amp. But then when they go play at a small venue or maybe their church or whatever it is, they can't have that same volume. And so having some of these, modern features like a DI out or a digital amp and cab sim are really handy in certain contexts. And obviously a vintage amp is not going to allow you to do that unless you have the ability to run it in a separate room, and that comes with its own challenges at times. So I think, again, for me, you're speaking my language with a vintage amp that I'm going to have into my 60s and 70s. Believe it or not, I'm not 60 years old yet. And so, yeah, I think for the right person, buying a vintage amp is a great thing, and it gives you a piece of history and a story to tell and great tones along the way. But for other people, I think it's a bit more impractical.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with buying used. I have more luck with used pedals or guitars or amps from years ago that are significantly better built. Just the quality of them are better, as well as like buying something new. Yeah, when you buy something new, you have warranties, and you have that return window that if you don't like it, that kind of stuff. And like that's always the worst thing. If you're looking for, and we say it here, like if someone comes in looking for something and the first question they ask is what's your return policy, like you're not gonna like you're not convinced on that amp.
They're not getting a rap from Brian. No
rap. Zero raps would be said. But like that's the thing is like, yes, some of that stuff is warranty, but yeah, it's also having knowledge of how to fix up that amp, or give it a little bit of TLC, or just knowing someone that can do it. And I have friends that have 10 Fender Deluxes throughout the years of all these different stuff, and they still have one that's like I think it's a 68 or something. I think, I can't remember, but it was from a while ago, and I'm like, man, this thing sounds really good. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, these suckers it's like just the way things were built back then. They were they were reliable, and some stuff wasn't reliable, but yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with the Gear Exchange or Craigslist, which I completely forgot was still around. That's like, I just, in Michigan, you just didn't get on you didn't get on Craigslist because there would be so many sketchy sales. But I mean, I think it's a great source. A lot of these marketplace. Sorry, I don't know. That's weird.
I find my best amps on Casual Encounters.
Oh wow. Yes.
Like Facebook Marketplace, that's been a very common thing for that kind of stuff. And I'll look on there occasionally for an AC30, because you can find them pretty cheap, mostly because I just love that amp and I sold it years ago.
Oh yeah, I forget about Facebook Marketplace. I mean, you could do the same thing.
Facebook Marketplace, and there's some good stuff, especially because you can do locally, or you can have select the parameters if you want it shipped or you want it locally. Which I have seen AC30s that are right down the street from me, and I'm like, I could get it, but then I don't.
Here, there's a lot of fraud on Facebook Marketplace. Like I've sold some stuff.
I've had a lot of good experiences myself. I will say I use it quite a bit.
I've had good experience too, but every once in a while I get messaged by like Svetlana. And
I've got your deluxe.
Yeah, and Svetlana like wants to Venmo you, and you get like an email of like a Venmo receipt, but like no Venmo.
Yep. My courier will send check with $5,000, like that kind of stuff. The funniest ones are when they offer you over asking price, and I'm like, all right, I already know that this is wrong. Bye. But yeah, no, I don't think the approach of buying stuff used is wrong. We buy used pedals all the time. There's nothing wrong with doing the amp approach. Amp is just a much bigger, thing. But it just, so no, I think it's great.
I think as well, like to go back on what I was saying earlier, if I had a dream scenario to cover multiple contexts, I would have my number one choice. Let's call it a vintage deluxe reverb. And then I would have a backup amp and cab sim for the times that I can't use live stage volume or it just isn't an option. But yeah, all of this to say, my number one choice will always be a great sounding tube amp. And then I would love to, in a perfect world, if budget allowed, to have a backup option that was something digital for, the rare time I couldn't do that. So yeah, I do agree with you, Mason, that going, with the actual tube amp is a great option, should be the number one. You learn so much as a guitar player as well, how to pull a sound out of an amp, which is a very valuable thing to have. How to mic up an amp, which is another skill all in and of itself. You can get so many sounds by changing mic type, mic position, all that. So there's a lot of lessons there to be learned as well that only makes you a better guitar player that you just can't get with an amp and cab sim in the same regard. So yeah, I think tube amp is great, but will not work in all current venues or options that are available.
Yeah. I want to continue with maybe a wrap up here of what we think is going to be the best solution for us all, amp wise. But before I do that, I want to turn it over to Brian to talk about a few more of our sponsors that make the podcast possible every week.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. So, as we talk about, we can't go a day without talking about some of these sponsors. And for me, one of them is Creation Music Company. The guys over in Tulsa. I literally have 3 packages being delivered today from them of cases, boards, pancake plugs, MIDI cable, anchors, zip ties, all the everything that I need to be able to do, like all this zip tie stuff that I use for all the builds and stuff are coming from them. But and they're quick and fast and a delightful group of people. I've known John for a long time, and they have a code for Chairmen 15. So it's CHAIRMEN 15 for 15% off. There are some exclusions, so if you go online and it doesn't apply to some of them, don't get mad. Don't throw your guitar at John or us. It does exclude some things, like some of their custom boards and cases. And their plugs are already discounted, so hey-o, already a discount. But what is this saying? 15% off is, I don't know. Is that
85% away from free?
Hey, it's the way you look at it. So check them out. They're amazing. CreationMusicCompany.com is their website, and go buy stuff from them. They're great. And another one is our newest sponsor, and probably one of my other favorites is Neural DSP. They are great. They have great plugins. The Quad Cortex is like that hot new item that everyone is kind of switching over to and testing out, and it's the most searched YouTube videos I have right now is how to do this on the Neural, how to do this on the Quad Cortex. It's just, there's just so many things it can do and will do, and it's amazing. They have amazing plugins with their coupon for Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off.
30.
Not 15.
That's 2 15% coupons that you can use at the same time.
Smash them together. You can just group on those coupons together.
Exactly.
And but it's 30% off, not their Neural DSP, unfortunately, but their plugins, which are absolutely amazing. And you can just, you can get 30% off any of their plugins except anything that's new, like brand new. The brand new stuff will be available and subject to the 30% off code after 90 days. Is it 90 days? 90 days. Yeah. So check them out. Check out all of our amazing sponsors. Buy stuff from them and make them happy. So That's it for our final sponsors. And I'll throw it back to Mason.
All right. So just to refresh you all on the list of the guitar amps that they said are the best of 2023. Let's just do a quick refresher just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So they say Positive Grid Spark is 1, Friedman BE Mini Head 2, Blackstar HT1R Mark II is 3, Katana 100 MK2 from Boss 4, 5 is the Marshall Origin 20C, 6 is Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister Deluxe 20 Head, so you'd still need a cabinet for that. Orange Rocker 15, 7, Fender Tone Master Twin Reverb is 8, Super 64 Reverb is 9, Fender 68 Custom Deluxe Reverb is 10, 11 is Vox AC30 C2, 12 is the Victoria V40 the Duchess Head, 13 is Blackstar St. James EL34 Combo, 14 is the Tone King Imperial Mark II, and that was it. So I think just to go back to overall what we're seeing from Guitar Player is I think that we're seeing sort of all modern choices, all current day production choices that have come out in the last few years. There's no real consideration for reliability or build. I think it's mostly going off of reputation. It's going off of potentially advertisements. I don't know. I can't, there's very few of these particular picks that I can really get behind. I think the only ones that when I see on that list that I'm like, okay, maybe I think the Tone Kings are well built. I think that the Victory amps are well built. I think Hughes and Kettner has had some good amps in the past. I don't know about that one in particular. But I mean, all the other stuff is like either solid state. That's not to say that like a Friedman BEOD is bad, but I think it's very close to just the BEOD pedal that then they add the ability to be able to, a power amp, a digital power amp to be able to drive a cabinet with. So it's kind of like a one-trick pony if you just want to have like that sound of a hot-rodded Marshall. They can drive some sort of speaker cabinet. I just don't think that these are like for what I view are realistic choices for guitar players on a lot of those picks. The Tone Master, I guess if you want a Fender sound is fine, but you just have to know that it's not going to be that reliable. Like it's not an amp that you can have forever. So this is why I say, for most of those amps that are really good on that list, they're, over $1,000, maybe even above $2,000 in some cases. And what I was showing you on Craigslist as an example, or, you could find similar deals, I'm sure, on Reverb and eBay and other places, is find a 70s Fender amp that's hand-wired. Find a Rivera-era Fender from the 80s that's hand-wired. Those have incredible reliability. They take pedals well, and you can kind of gauge the Fender that you want based on, what you need. And you can, get a 20 water like a deluxe, or if you need the headroom of a really big clean amp, you can go with a Showman or a Bandmaster or a Twin or whatever it is that you need. And they're all kind of in the same range price-wise. So I think that's where the real deal is. If you really want to get a great tube amp that's also a pedal platform, I think that's where people should go. Grant or Brian, final thoughts today?
Yeah. I think I would take a slightly different approach. But I do agree that if you're a serious guitar player or maybe a gigging guitar player that you're going to do this for a while, I would absolutely go with your suggestions, Mason. I think I just differ a little bit on the, new guitar player practicing at home, some of these digital platforms can be quite handy, even if they aren't going to last the rest of your life. I don't think they need to necessarily. I think they probably need to last you for your first year of playing, and then you can sell them, move them on to someone else that's starting out, or gift them, give them away. So I do see value in the modern features that are currently available. Although I will reiterate again, they are not my choice for me and where I'm at as a guitar player.
They could get 30% off those Neural DSP plugins. They could start there on their
or
computer.
You could go with the plugins. There you go. So so tons of options, and you could honestly do that. You could just plug straight into your computer. So I think the digital options do have a place, although they are not ever going to be my number one choice. I just love a mic'd up tube amp, and there's nothing like that. So yeah, that's where I would be. I'd probably be somewhere more down the middle, I'd say.
I think if you're starting off, see me, when I started off, I started with like a 1x10 crate, like little combo amp, just this little guy. And I think that's where a lot of I think that's the funny thing about being a musician is I find that sometimes musicians will argue more about gear than just kind of playing, which is fine. It's fine to disagree. We all have different opinions. But I think like if you are as a musician, like right now, if I was starting out right now as a guitar player, I would be overwhelmed with the amount of information and options galore, because we all kind of get wrapped into the options thing. There's just so many things. I wanted to do all these different things, start my car, turn on the coffee maker, and give my dog a bath. Like, it's like, you're not going to find everything in one. And starting out, you're going to find a $150 practice amp that is probably not going to sound amazing. Some people are not touring with $150 amps on tour and miking it up and stuff. But there's always like a stage of buying a pretty crappy amp, and then when you're actually committed to buying a decent amp. And then like if you've been playing for 15-20 years, you're going to have more sophisticated tone about it, like sophisticated taste and tone and stuff, and what what you like. Because when in the beginning you don't know what you like. Heck, I didn't even know what a delay pedal or reverb pedal really did when I first started, but I had them on my board because everyone had a delay and reverb.
Been there. And
I had a MXR 10-band EQ on my board, and I literally had no idea what it did, so I made it look like it was doing waves, and it probably sounded horrible with my guitar. like that's the stuff. It sounded absolutely horrible. But to me,
you just do it as like a mood thing? Like if you're feeling good, you do a happy face. If you're feeling sad, you do a sad face.
Exactly. Sometimes I was like, I want to see the mountains, so I'll do a mountain effect or something. But Beautiful. Like, I literally had no idea what that stuff was doing. But that's the thing is with guitar amps too. Some of those amps, I will say, because it's harder to trust someone that is telling you what to buy if they've never played it. So some of those amps on the list I can't speak on because I haven't played some of them. But I've seen people that have played them and have loved them. So it's by choice. I don't think you could buy an amp. If you buy a 1 watt amp, you're gonna complain if it's really quiet because it's 1 watt. Like there's certain things of do's and don'ts of what to buy and what not to buy. But I think it's kind of starting off, stepping your foot into the water. It's like getting into a cold pool. You step your foot in and then you slowly get more and more and more in the pool, and then you're like, okay, this isn't as horrible, that kind of thing. I think that's what it comes down to when it comes to amps and everything, is just find something and love it. And me, I've been playing for 20 years. I love a Fender Deluxe amp and an AC30. Those are my two amps. If I had a place where I could have those set up all the time, and that was what I play every single time I play, that would be my go-to. 20 years ago, I didn't even know what Fender Deluxe and AC30 were. So simple enough to say Fender Deluxe, AC30 are my favorites, but don't feel like you have to go buy a $5,000 amp when you're first starting off. Just get something you can afford, get playing, and then upgrade from there.
All right.
And then I'll rap to you after.
Yeah, here we go.
Brian will rap to close any
beginning
sale.
Of next episode, I'm hoping.
We're gonna get a couple beats ready for you, Brian. So I think one thing that I just want to say before we wrap, I'll make sure that in the description I link maybe some deals that I find on Craigslist so that people are able to find those, and you can look locally to see what maybe is near you, but maybe some of these guys will ship, or if you're not local, or if it's a really killer deal and it's a few hours drive, maybe it's worth it for you to come on out to the Bay Area, where I would say Craigslist for amplifiers is incredibly replete with great deals. But I think most major cities now have quite a few good deals that are available on there. You can just kind of keep your eyes peeled, or same with Facebook Marketplace. But I'll try to ID a few of them, and so that way people can have a look, whether it be Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, the Gear Exchange on Sweetwater, etc. I think secondly, check out Lyle's at Psionic Audio's YouTube channel. He is the best resource, I think, for understanding what is under the hood on a lot of these amps, and he gives a lot of really great recommendations. So I will link his site and some of his videos that go over the best amps that are at different price points, and he goes through it from a technical standpoint and really helps you have an idea of like what is the best built amp that you can buy for the money. So those are just great resources. And again, please do support our sponsors. By supporting them, you're in turn supporting us. And if you feel compelled to, writing us a review on iTunes is a great way to support us for free. All the other podcast apps all kind of look to the iTunes reviews to inform whether they should be indexing or prioritizing our podcast. And as I've said before, we're still number one in Bangladesh. We're still number one in Azerbaijan. So thank you to the Azerbaijani people. In Mexico, in the state of Jalisco and Guadalajara, we're number 2 and number 3. So shout out to all of our listeners in Mexico. But we want to become as high ranked as we can in the U.S. market, which is where our primary listener base is. And doing a review for us gives us just another edge to be able to get there. So thank you all for listening. Until next time, we're going to hop back into the Miata, and Grant's going to put that automatic transmission back in drive and head on down to Tone Town.
See you next week.
See ya.